You already know what you're about to order before the waiter finishes asking. You're nodding along to a friend's story before you've actually decided you agree with them. Your hand catches a falling glass off the counter before any thought like, catch that, ever crosses your mind. And here's the strange part. You experience all of this as choosing. As if some version of you sat quietly behind your eyes, weighed the options, and gave the order. That version of you does not exist. Not the way you think it does. Let's start with the story you've probably been telling yourself your whole life, because almost everyone tells it the same way. Somewhere in your head, there's a kind of command center. Information comes in through your eyes and ears. It gets passed along, step by step, like a bucket brigade, from one brain region to the next, each one doing a little more processing, until it finally reaches the top. And at the top sits the decider. The real you. The part that looks at all the incoming reports, thinks it over, and issues the verdict. Move your hand. Say yes. Order the fish. It's a tidy story. It's also almost completely wrong. Here's what researchers have actually found when they look closely at what your brain is doing in the moments before you act. There is no top. There is no final desk where all the reports land and a decision gets stamped and approved. Instead, the regions of your brain that are supposedly just gathering raw information, the ones handling basic sight and sound, are already being shaped by signals coming back down from the so-called higher regions, before those raw signals have even finished arriving. It's not a one-way bucket brigade. It's a conversation happening in both directions, constantly, and it starts almost instantly. Think about what that actually means. The part of your brain that's still technically looking is already being told what it's probably about to see. The part that's still technically listening is already being shaped by a guess about what it's about to hear. This isn't a metaphor. It's measurable. Signals travel backward through the system, from areas involved in meaning and expectation, into the areas that are supposed to be doing simple, early-stage perception. By the time information finishes its first pass through your brain, it has already been edited by expectations formed just a fraction of a second earlier. So here's the question worth sitting with. If perception itself is already being shaped by expectation before conscious thought gets involved, when exactly does a decision happen? The old model needed a clean answer. Perceive, then think, then decide, then act, each step handing off neatly to the next. The new picture doesn't offer a clean answer, because there isn't a single moment where deciding occurs. There's no line you cross. There's a fast, layered negotiation, running across multiple brain regions at once, adjusting itself in real time, and by the time any of it becomes something you're aware of, most of the actual computational work is already finished. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little. You experience your decisions as things you make. In order. On purpose. A beginning, middle, and end you're present for the whole way through. But the evidence points somewhere else entirely. Conscious awareness looks less like the control room and more like a press release. Something gets decided, deep in a tangle of interacting brain regions you have no direct access to, and only after that does a summary get delivered to the part of you that experiences things. You're not reading the meeting minutes. You're reading the announcement that went out after the meeting already happened. Let's make this concrete, because it's easy to nod along to this and still not feel it. Picture someone tossing you a set of keys without warning. Your hand shoots up. You catch them. Now try to locate the moment you decided to move your hand. You can't, not really, because there wasn't one. Your visual system was already primed to expect an object in motion. Regions handling movement and space were already looping information back and forth with regions handling your arm before the keys were even halfway across the room. Your hand moved because a distributed, ongoing negotiation across your nervous system resolved itself in that direction. You noticed your hand moving. You didn't author the movement first and then let it happen. Or think about meeting someone new. Within a second or two, you've formed an impression. Trustworthy or not. Friendly or guarded. Interesting or forgettable. Ask yourself honestly. Did you decide that impression, weighing evidence carefully, the way you'd imagine a judge would? Or did it simply arrive, fully formed, and your conscious mind spent the next few seconds explaining to itself why that impression made sense? For most people, most of the time, it's the second one. The verdict shows up first. The reasoning gets built afterward, like scaffolding put up around a building that's already standing. Here's another one, smaller, but just as telling. A text message comes in from a close friend. You read the first 3 words and you already know their mood before you finish the sentence. Annoyed. Excited. Something's wrong. Nobody sat down and reasoned through it. The pattern arrived whole, assembled out of years of knowing exactly how this particular person writes when something is off. That's not a shortcut layered on top of thinking. That is the thinking, running at a speed conscious reflection could never keep up with. So how do scientists even catch something moving this fast? Not by asking people what they were thinking, because by the time someone can answer that question, the moment they're describing is long gone, already rewritten into a tidy story. Instead, researchers watch the brain directly while it works, timing exactly when different regions become active relative to each other, down to fractions of a second. What they keep finding is that supposedly early regions, the ones that are just supposed to be receiving raw sight and sound, light up in patterns that already reflect information from regions that are supposed to come later. The order gets scrambled. The hierarchy doesn't hold up. Something that was assumed to be a strict one-way pipeline turns out to be closer to a dozen people talking over each other in the same room, all shaping the conversation at once. This is where it's worth being precise about what the research is actually claiming, because it's easy to overcorrect into something more dramatic than what's true. Nobody is saying your choices are random, or that you're a passenger with zero influence over what you do. What's being challenged is the idea of a single, centralized decision-maker sitting apart from the rest of the process, calmly reviewing options like a judge reading case files. That specific picture doesn't hold up. What replaces it is messier, but arguably more interesting. Your brain is running dozens of these back-and-forth negotiations simultaneously, between regions handling perception, memory, emotion, and movement, each one influencing the others in real time, each one shaped by everything you've experienced up to that point. And that last part matters more than it sounds like it should. If there's no separate decider reviewing evidence from a neutral distance, then the shape of these fast negotiations is entirely built from your history. Every time you've caught a ball, the pathways involved get a little faster, a little more efficient, a little more prepared to resolve the same way next time. Every time you've met someone in a certain kind of situation and formed a snap impression, the pattern gets reinforced, for better or worse. You're not absent from this process. You're distributed throughout it. Your past practice, your past experiences, your past patterns of attention are baked directly into the circuitry doing the negotiating. There's no you standing outside the machine pulling levers. You are the machine, shaped by everything that came before this exact moment. This also explains something that's puzzled people for a long time. Why does it feel so hard to talk yourself out of a snap judgment, even when you know, intellectually, that it's unreliable? Why does a skilled athlete's hand move correctly before they could possibly have thought it through? Why do experienced professionals in fast-moving situations, pilots, surgeons, emergency responders, often describe their best decisions as things that simply happened, rather than things they reasoned their way to in the moment? Because in all of these cases, the real work was done earlier. Not earlier in that specific second, but earlier across years of repetition, tuning those distributed circuits until they resolve quickly and, often, correctly, long before conscious thought has time to catch up and narrate what occurred. None of this makes conscious thought pointless. It's just not doing the job most people assume it's doing in the moment of action. Conscious, deliberate thinking is enormously useful for slower problems. Planning next month. Weighing a major life decision with time to spare. Reflecting on a mistake so the underlying circuits adjust for next time. What it is not doing, most of the time, is standing at the front of a bucket brigade, waiting for information to arrive so it can issue a verdict. It's arriving after the verdict, dressed up as the verdict itself. And this is actually where you have more influence than it first sounds like, not less. You can't reach into the exact moment a snap decision resolves and redirect it by force of will, because by the time you notice it, it's already happened. But you can shape the negotiation itself, long before it runs. Every rehearsal, every repeated situation, every deliberate correction after a mistake becomes raw material those circuits use the next time they need to resolve something fast. A surgeon doesn't get better by thinking harder in the operating room. They get better by feeding thousands of earlier moments into the same fast machinery, so that when speed is the only option, the machinery already knows what to do. You're not a passenger in this system. You're the one training it, session after session,